really happy to see you today. I am here today with Jonas, Bladt, Hansen, and Kevin Hähnlein. I'll introduce them shortly, but we are really looking forward to discuss how to build a business case that your CFO will gladly fund. I'd like to introduce you to Jonas Bladt Hansen. He is joining us today from Copenhagen, and he is the founder of Next Level IC. He works with internal communication teams and has done this for many years, spoken to many C-level leaders, also CFOs, and really understands where the challenges are when it comes to employee experience and building a strong digital workplace. He also has Unmute, a peer learning community for internal communications professionals, and he has at least 15 years experience as a senior in-house communications expert. So Jonas will walk us through how to build a business case for a CFO today, and definitely take you on the journey with a little hands-on session. And then I have Kevin Hähnlein here. He is heading marketing and strategic advisory at Staffbase, the employee communications and employee experience platform. And he also brought a lot of experience from Unily, from Halo, lived in America for a while, worked with big clients there. Now is back, I believe, Kevin, close to Berlin, right?
Yep, correct.
Awesome. So I think you have two strong partners to discuss. Myself, I'm Anna Diaz. I'm the director of the Nordics and Benelux business here at Staffbase. And I'm going to mute myself. I will have an eye on the chat. If you have any questions on the journey, if you need anything, any ideas, please share them here in the chat. And while the two of them are getting started, I'm probably going to post a little warm-up question to get you all used to our chat. So first question in the chat in the background while we get started is, where are you all dialing in from? I hand over.
Thanks, Annette.
Thanks, Annette. So let's just get started. I think while you share where you're from in the chat, I'll see if I can get my presentation up and running. And the plan today is that I will give you a short introduction to the topic. Then we'll do a live stress test, and you are the first ones who have the opportunity to take this kind of stress test that we built. Let's call it a pilot, right? So we hope everything's working. And then in the end, we'll see the results, hopefully, and we will then discuss what we can see, and also, how we can actually take this to a level where the executive level and the CFO would like to fund it. So how can we translate the challenges that we see that you face and what the Intranet can offer into something that you could say that the executive level would like to fund. So let's get started. So I hope you can see the presentation now.
Looks good, Jonas.
At least I can, so that's good. Fantastic. So let's get started with something that, so the first thing I'd like to say is that I've been looking a lot into employee experience and how we communicate about employee experience when we try to build an intranet, and in general, how we communicate about employee experience in organizations. And I think in some way, we have gotten it a bit wrong in terms of where to focus, because one of the biggest challenges that I see with employee experience is that we focus a lot about getting people a great feeling about how it is to work in an organization, but we need to start in a different place, right? So we need to figure out how can we actually make it easy for people to get their work done. And I think that's also something we get wrong sometimes when we talk about where to invest in organizations in general, because what I often see in organizations is that the onboarding experience as such, the event in itself might be fantastic, but when it comes to finding stuff on the internet and so on, it kind of lacks a great experience, right? So that's where we need to focus and to begin to look at, because what we see is that we still spend a lot of time around work. So actually, we spend a lot of time to actually, figuring out, finding, we need to find stuff. We search for stuff. You can see here 25% of the work week is spent on searching for answers to something. And And our knowledge workers, 58% of knowledge workers, they actually spend, 58% of the time from knowledge workers is actually spent on work about work. So it's not the actual work, but it's actually meeting about work and so on, finding stuff, searching for stuff, coordination and so on. And 6 hours is lost every week by the frontline workers because of the tools that are ineffective. So there's a lot of, you could say, opportunity for improvement in organizations. And I don't know if that's something you can, or if it resonates with you who are listening, but please share if that's the case, or if it's not. I will definitely share some perspectives today that are worth discussing, and you are very welcome also to disagree with me. That's also often the best discussions we can get, right? But there's a paradox because we have invested a lot in in the digital workplace over time in the last decades. But there's something to it that you kind of see that we add, when we add digital tools today, we tend to add a bit more confusion to the workplace. So we see, we add platforms, but when we add platforms, the experience ends up become more switching between tools, which is inefficient in itself. When we add more, when we communicate more, we create more noise. When we create more self-service, we might end up getting people, busy with form, doing a lot more form filling. And if we offer more collaboration tools, we might actually end up in more coordination. So there's a huge, you could say, task here in figuring out how can we actually create a much better experience based on the services that we offer. And speaking of services, there's something about the diagnosis that was right when we talk about experience, because back in '94 there was a great guy called James Heskett who wrote this book called The Service Profit Chain, which actually was the foundational book that ended up in a book in 2017 focusing on the employee experience. But we kind of took away the wrong lesson about it, because we ended up focusing a lot about increasing engagement. So we did a lot of initiatives that hopefully would increase the engagement at work, but we forgot the most basic question, or the most basic focus, which is about what is preventing our people from doing the best work. Because that's the most important thing for people to actually get done in their everyday work. So there are two different ways to see this. Pine and Gilmore wrote a book called The Experience Economy, where they kind of made this very good distinction between service and experience. And service is defined by time well saved, and experience is defined by time well spent. And I would argue that a lot of the investment in organizations is going into what we can call time well spent, but we forget about the investment in time well saved. Let me give you an example on how that could look, what that could look like. So that's what I just said. But here we can say, for instance, if you look at time well saved, there could, for instance, be a newly onboarded person who say, I can complete my onboarding tasks, right? The experience could be that I feel welcomed, capable, and part of the organization. But if you would start with the experience and forget about the service, then people might have the initial feeling of that I feel welcomed, capable, and part of the organization. But when they then start to complete the onboarding task, they find out, okay, that's not possible. And then everything kind of falls apart, right? So it's about figuring out how can we create a great service so that we can build on the service to build a great experience. So that's the way I see it. So now the big question is, why should let's just start with this one. So we can start to give this a name, right? So we can call it the administrative tax, because that's actually what it is. So we are building kind of a tax that people pay every time they have to do something in the organization. So if the search is not working, people spend a lot of time trying to find stuff. If they switch between platforms, they are also missing out on time, focus, and so on. Every time an update arrives too late to people, or even doesn't arrive, people miss out on important information. And if people spend their time on duplicating solutions, that's also a waste of time. So there's a lot of time that is kind of you could say a cost here. So the big question is, when we speak of time, who should actually focus on this? So it just accumulated, right? So nobody created this on purpose. IT might have bought a secure, compliant tool, but the two-factor login made it difficult to use. That's something I've experienced myself in organizations. So they might have one focus. HR might have had a great focus on building or buying an LMS platform that fitted their brief, but they figured out that the vendor was weak on mobile. Internal comms might have launched a social platform, but they forgot about having a clear purpose, and then actually ended up creating more noise and confusion. So everything, good intentions, but in the end, it creates a lot of friction in the organization. So the big question is, since this is just about time wasted, so why should executives care about this? This is something I've experienced a lot when we talk about building business cases in organizations. So if you, for instance, would all the things that I said right now early on, I would just say, okay, this is a lot of time wasted. Can't we just translate this into what it actually costs to the organization? That's very difficult to do because I've tried that actually. I've tried to build that kind of business case where I try to figure out what does it actually take for people to search, and why, if we could do it better, what would be safe, and what would that actually translate into euros. And there was once a wise CFO who looked at me and said, well, that's just funny money, right? So if you can't show me where the real savings is, I don't really know where to take the money from. And I think he was kind of right. So we need to figure out how we can reframe the discussion, and how we can tell a story where it actually matters to the executive level in terms of what a great digital platform can do to the business. So therefore, let's just have a look at one example of a use case, right? So this is obviously a fictional example, but it's actually inspired by a real example that I heard of in Denmark once. So let's just talk about a person here called Sam, who is working in a store, and she actually starts out her day with a blank page. She hasn't received any update on yesterday's product issue. So now a customer walks in and he has a question about this problem that landed yesterday. She can't find anything about it. And she says, why don't you call customer service? And he said he already did that. He tried that, but the waiting line was too long. So this is actually why he's in the store. He didn't get any answer, so he leaves very disappointed. So what would have happened if she was actually equipped, if she had gotten the news, the information in terms of what to do? Obviously, she would be able to offer a better service and maybe even upsell. That's also something that happens sometimes when people get great service, or the customer might leave satisfied instead of dissatisfied. So you might get a loyal customer instead of a disloyal customer. And it actually reminds a lot about the 94 book, The Service Profit Chain. You know, if you are able to equip your employees with the right tools, the right information, they will actually take care of the customer, and the customer will take care of your profit. So that's what we want to look for. We want to find these use cases that are actually really important to the business. Then we want to link what the digital workplace can offer, and then show how this is actually changing the game for the business.
Maybe if I chime in for a second, Jonas, I think I love that example, and it really resonates with how we're currently building business cases with a lot of our customers, with those very tangible use cases. And sometimes it's as simple as within this example. If information is shared very transparently across an entire workforce, including those hardest to reach employees who show up at 8 a.m. to start their shift, that already sometimes is a use case that's, again, would be hard to quantify, but very, very profitable potentially. And I think one other thought I had, going back to the history of how we've maybe focused on engagement too much, I think that's definitely something I see as well, even though I would argue that engagement is still a super important metric in this whole equation, right? Because if we think about, and I agree, like saving time is not the business case alone. I haven't met a CFO who would approve something because you say, oh, we're going to save every employee 5 minutes of time every day. Well, the problem is that nobody can guarantee you what your employees are going to do with those 5 minutes that they're saving, right? They're likely to take those 5 minutes and just go smoke a cigarette or extend their lunch break, or like I'm sitting here at home, my home office, I might have another cup of coffee. what makes me invest those 5 minutes into my work and giving back to my company?
Yeah.
And this is where engagement comes back to the equation. Because if I'm an engaged employee, I identify with my company, I love working at Staffbase, and I'm more than happy to spend those 5 extra minutes on being more productive, on being more efficient. This is then where it all comes together.
Yeah, right. But you could also argue that an equipped employee like Sam here, she would be more engaged, right? Because it's easy for her to help the customer, so she gets more positive feedback, which might lead to more engagement because it's more fun to be at work.
Yeah, of course, and it's a sign of recognition as well, right?
Yes.
If you're feeling like you're always informed, it's a good feeling. Like in that example, it's probably not a nice feeling for her that a client knows something about her company that she's not aware of. Definitely something that'll do something to her recognition as well.
Yes, agree. So now the big question is, for your intranet, is the question you have to ask, the tough question you have to ask yourself is, does your intranet make it easier for your people to do the work they were hired to do? Now, I say intranet could be the digital workplace. It's a bit confusing right now with all these terms, right? So let's just assume the intranet is representing the digital workplace right now. And that's something we need to find out now. So we try to create not a benchmark, but kind of a stress test where you can see how your intranet is performing right now and compared to what it actually could be offering in 2026. So we've developed 12 cases we'd like to take you through now. And what you should do is to either, if you want to use it on mobile, you should scan the QR code. And in a second, I will share the link with you in the chat so that you can use it on the what is it called? Here it is. No, it's not. On the laptop or on your computer. I'll just open it in a second. Here it is.
Yeah, you're gonna be our guinea pigs today. We've been working on this stress test for the past couple of weeks, and it's a prototype, but it's a very fun exercise. So hopefully, you all now have either scanned the QR code or clicked on the link that Jonas has shared in the chat, and then we're gonna walk through this stress test together.
Let us know if you're in.
Yeah, this is what the starting page should look like for everyone right now. Just asks you to put in your name or an email and an email address, and then you can start the reality check.
So I'll just walk through the 12 use cases with you. So just if you look into the chat, there's a thumbs up that looks like it's working. Then Line, that's good. So I hope it works for all of you who are trying to. I'm just trying to log in now, and I hope that you can see it. I just have to wait a second, split the screen so that I can see what's going on the other screen. Here we go. Nothing is happening. Wait a second.
You might have to reshare, Jonas. I don't know what you're currently sharing.
I think I'll have to do that. Wait a second. Let's take it out. This is because it's kind of stuck. Let me just remove it completely.
That's what prototypes do. They get stuck.
So I'll just try one more time. Yeah. Yeah. Share screen. Let's see if this is the right one. Does it work now?
You got to bring it up on stage.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yep. It's
Does
moving.
It? Fantastic.
Awesome.
So let's get started. So this is the first test. I'll just try to bring you up into the screen so that I can see what you're writing here. In a second. Yeah. I'm also working with a split screen here, so I just want to. So yeah, here we are.
While you're setting up, Jonas, maybe I can explain already what you're going to be seeing.
Yes.
So it's going to be 12 different use cases with a headline and a quick description that you can skim, and then basically you're asked to say how you're currently handling it, all the way from you're currently nailing it to you're failing. Maybe something it's painful, maybe it's something you haven't explored yet, and then the slider on the bottom lets you choose a level of how critical this capability is to your organization.
Exactly. Thank you, Kevin. And you have to slide it because you can't move on if you haven't slided it. So even if you want to have it in the middle, you have to just move it once. So let's take the first one. Everyone needs to know in 10 minutes. A safety act. I mean, what is important here also is to use your imagination in terms of this might not be the exactly the case that might be relevant for you, but try to use your imagination to see is there any similar case that I can relate to based on this description. So a safety incident has just occurred on site. Every affected employee needs to know within 10 minutes, including the ones without company email address, without a corporate device, and currently on the factory floor. 30 minutes later, leadership will ask who has actually seen it. How well can your current setup handle that? So I'll just put in mine to curious to explore and nice to have, because I don't want to confuse the results in the end so that we can easily identify mine. But please.
I would say for most of the attendants, this is probably a very, very critical component, and definitely something I would say every organization can relate to, because there's always some sort of crisis, urgent communications in every organization out there.
I would believe so, yeah. So now another one. You only need to reach 40 out of the 600 people on the specific site. So the night shift at one distribution center needs to know the loading bay is closed tomorrow. It's a very relevant message to 40 people out of the 600 on that site. At best, only these 40 receive the message. How well can your current setup handle that? And I think
targeting,
that's
huh?
What? Targeting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why we create so much noise in the organization, because we try to reach these 40 by communicating with 600, right?
Yeah, and that's a lot of customers share that pain with us. Those who previously maybe only had a SharePoint, and targeting, as we know in Microsoft environment, is not that simple. So even if you have theoretical reach, then you sometimes share information to people that's not even part of the target audience.
Yes. And the next one. A third of the warehouse doesn't read the language you publish in. I guess that's also something a lot of people can relate to, because a lot of organizations have this kind of English language, right, as the one language they use. Here it's about a new handling procedure goes out to the distribution center. Of the 200 people who have to follow it, 30 read Polish or Romanian more comfortably than the language it was written in. At best, each of them receives it in the language they actually read. How well can your current setup handle that?
Yeah, super crucial, right? Even employees who do speak fairly well English across the world, they will always be much more engaged. This is basically also proven by our analytics data, but they'll also be able to follow through what they're reading there if it's just in their native language.
Mm-hmm. And I've been in organizations where we had to choose that English is the language that we use, because we didn't have any resources to translate it anymore. And it was just back in the times when we didn't have AI, it was just too expensive to do. Next one. Starting a shift with no idea what changed. That's back to the example we just had in the presentation. So a store employee starts her shift. A product fault was reported yesterday and a promotion changes today. She has 4 minutes before the doors open and her hands are full. At best, she starts the shift knowing what changed since she last worked. How well can your current setup handle that?
Yeah, that's basically our SAM example from
Yes,
earlier, right? I think
exactly.
A lot of organizations I've worked with in the past, they would handle this through a Blackboard or through managerial communications, and the shift leader would basically be responsible to give information down from top to bottom, which, as we all know, is not the most reliable channel of communications.
Exactly. Okay, so production is down. The answer is in a 200-page manual. So a machine stops on the production line. The fix is described somewhere inside a 200-page manual, and revised procedure was issued last quarter. The technician needs the right answer in 30 seconds and needs to know that it is the current one. How well can your current setup handle that?
A pretty advanced use case, I would say, right? But that
Yes.
already imagines a reality where production workers would have access to something,
Yeah.
which I would say in most organizations probably is not true yet, but definitely something that we are seeing customers moving towards that direction, and thinking of an intranet, thinking of an employee app as something that not only informs about company news, but actually crucial day-to-day operational manuals, what to do in crisis X, what to do in situation B. So that's definitely something that goes much more into operational use
Yes.
cases.
I think that's definitely where there's a huge amount of value, but there's also, and it's been made possible due to AI. But at the same time, AI comes with a kind of a caveat because we have to make sure that the information is accurate, right? That people get out there.
Exactly, and it has to be 100% accurate, right?
Yeah.
If you think of, Jonas, how you and I use Copilot or Claude, if there's a little bit of a 95% incorrectness, then that's fine, right? Because
Yeah.
we do office work, we can handle that. But in that example, we need 100% accuracy, right? Because 99% accuracy is not good enough at work in those operational use cases.
Exactly. All right, the onboarding situation. A new hire with 100 questions. So a new hire is in her third week. Today it's expensive and expenses. Last week it was about the returns procedure. Tomorrow it will be something else. She does not know who to ask, which system to check, or what the policy is called. Average tenure in this role is 12 months. At best, she gets a straight answer each time the question comes up, and the rest of what she needs arrives across the first weeks rather than all at once on day one. How well can your current setup handle that? So this is about creating a great onboarding journey over time, and not just trying to fill everything in a onboarding session in one day, right?
Yeah, and this is also tying this all back to our business case topic here. This is one of my favorite angles and examples I use to build a business case. Because one, every organization needs to onboard new people, and there is a very tangible, quantifiable number behind how long does it take you to bring a new employee up to speed. So how long does the ramp time take? And if you can accelerate that ramp time and decrease it, let's say it currently takes you 30 days, and through a digitized process, through an app, through journeys, you can maybe decrease it by 5 to 10 days. That already is a lot of money potentially behind this, because you will have employees at 100% working capability much quicker.
Yes. It's called something, Kevin. Do you remember the name? It's time to competence, right? It's something you.
Correct. Yeah, we call this KPI time to competence.
Yeah. Okay, a very simple one. 3 phone calls to order a uniform. I've actually heard a similar example. I'll just share it in a second. But here it's about an employee needs a new uniform, wants to check her payslip, and wants to book 2 days off next month. At best, she completes all 3 from her phone during a break. How well can your current setup handle that? This week I spoke with a good friend of mine who were trying to order just some coffee for our meeting, the event that we would be holding. And it took her, I think she said it took her 3 or 4 hours to do that, to get the kind of, there was some kind of a budget requirement she couldn't figure out how to solve. So it took her so much time to figure out how to do that. So I think these are the small things that cost a lot of time.
Yeah, and there's so many of them, right?
Yeah.
So many forms that you could potentially just digitize, and things where it currently takes employees to call people or ask 5 different people to come to a resolution.
Exactly. Okay, 6 systems to answer one customer question. This is back to what we also talked about in the presentation, all the platforms that we might end up having. So it's a customer who asks about stock, lead time, and price. To answer, the account manager opens the intranet, the CRM system, the document library, the ticketing system, a pricing sheet, and a shared drive. At best, the answers or she answers from one place while the customer is still on the phone. How well can your current setup handle that?
I think that's one of my all-time favorites, and even also in our current day and age of AI and accessing information more through AI interfaces. I think this is one of the most critical. I think this is going to be the one that I would put on number one, most critical, I would say. Just because of all of what you just described, and everyone that's listening can probably relate. There's so many different sources of truth within an organization, and you can imagine that right now, somewhere in your company, there's probably someone about to act on the wrong information. Just because that right information never reached them, and there's so many contradicting information within all those systems that people have access to. And also, no one was clearly responsible for keeping information accurate. I think we'll have another governance use case in a second here, but people in your organization are watching the wrong information often enough and for a long time already that they just stop believing into where to find things. And this is one of the most important challenges to solve for an organization, to come to a state where employees are trusting information and have a single source of truth to act upon.
Agree, and I think one of the things that I often experience is that a lot of people who are working with intranets, they are not aware that things have changed now, so that it's actually possible to integrate a lot of the platforms that HR, procurement, and others might have. So that's kind of a game changer as I see it. But obviously it makes sense that people are not aware, because how often do you actually change an intranet, right? So it's like maybe every 10 years, maybe, right? So there's a lot of things that are constantly changing in this game. All right, you sent the instruction. Did anyone do it? So a national promotion launches Monday. Every store was told displays up, pricing changed. The staff must be briefed before opening, at best by 10 a.m. The regional manager can see which of the 40 stores actually did it and see the evidence without driving to each site. So how well can your current setup handle that? So this is not about seeing if someone actually read the information. It's actually about showing with pictures and so on that they actually did that. Let's go to the next one. So now it's the last one, which is about trust, proof, and governance. This is the one you just talked about, Kevin. Nobody knows which version is the right one. A field employee claims her mileage using the rate she found on the internet. Payroll rejected. So that's about faulty information, right? That page was superseded 18 months ago. Nobody archived it. It has no owner, and it still comes up before the current one. At best, you can say which page is authoritative, who owns it, how many other people were giving the same wrong answer, and which of your other 4,000 pages are out of date, duplicated, or contradict each other. So how well can your current setup handle that kind of governance challenge?
Yeah, that's the governance challenge we mentioned a second ago, which is very apparent to a lot of organizations who are currently working with. Luckily on that one, a lot of customers I work with think that this is an unsolvable challenge just because they're sitting on years of documentation and thousands of documents. But luckily, this is where I think technology and also AI can help a lot with. So we're currently also within a Staffbase platform releasing things like what we call autopilot, or things that help you AI governance, to apply AI-driven governance in your organization, in your platform. So you don't have to walk through all of those pages manually, but actually AI can help you and say, look at this, look at that. This is outdated. This is duplicated information. Here's a missing owner. Here's something needs to be updated. And then you only kind of step by step look at what needs to be updated most urgently.
Yes, I think AI definitely helps here, right? So otherwise it would be an unsurmountable task. I've tried to done that once when I was at Arla Foods, where we had this kind of Excel sheet with all the with all the data, all the sites. We had to figure out if was still actual information or not. That took some months to do.
Sounds like torture.
Yeah, it was. So right, next one. Everyone trained in 48 hours, including night shifts. A phishing campaign is targeting your organization using AI-generated impersonations of your executives. Security training must be completed and signed off by every employee within 48 hours. Night shifts, people on leave, everyone without a corporate device. 2 days later, the CISO, so the IT boss, wants completion by site and by role. How well can your current setup handle that? This is about urgency and reach. I remember this was not about training, but this was more about reach. When we were in the pandemic, someone from a large organization called me and asked what they would, if there was any tool that could actually reach everyone, because they had sent their people from the production line home, and now they couldn't reach them anymore because they didn't had their contact info, so they had to go through their managers. So that was kind of a problem.
Last one.
Did anyone actually understand it? So 2 weeks after a major announcement, leadership asks how it landed. They don't want the open rate. They want to know whether people actually understood what it means for them, whether they believe it, and whether there's a pocket of the organization where something is quietly going wrong. At best, you can answer this week. How well can your current setup handle that?
Yeah, similar to the one we had earlier, right, where we asked whether someone had acted on an updated information.
Yes.
This is again going into measuring understanding, measuring maybe sentiment, measuring feedback over a period of time, right? If you run a comprehensive security campaign, then you don't only want to know how many people clicked on an article and how many people watched a security video, but actually with a quiz or with a little feedback form over time, how has this changed their awareness of the security policy, for example? So it's super crucial. And again, something that you could nicely tie into a business case as well. I just this morning spoke to a customer where we were talking about accidents, a manufacturing customer out of Japan, actually, who currently documents accidents only in Japanese and shares it with their HQ employees. So if they now were able to document accidents global in multiple languages globally and share this with everyone, then they could make sure that the awareness for those type of accidents would increase, and ultimately the number of accidents would decrease, which again can be nicely quantified into an actual number.
Yeah.
For your business case.
Okay, so these were the 12. Now I can see my results, which are not very, very interesting because I put in the same all over. So what I would like to see is the live dashboard and see if anyone else actually answered it. So we had 7 respondents here, and what we can see on the top are those who are, you could say, the most important, and also where there's the biggest gap right now. So starting a shift with no idea what changed, production is down. The answer is in the 200-page manual. 3 phone calls to order a uniform. That's the very basic practical example here. A new hire with 100 questions, which is the onboarding part. So these are the 4, you could say, the 4 most important with the biggest gaps over here.
Interesting. Yeah, starting a shift with no idea what changed. I think that one resonated a lot because we used that example at the beginning as well.
Yeah. And then we have the production is down. It's painful and we fail. Yes. And the phone call. That's actually one who nails it. And the good ones down here, which is anything that's surprising, everyone needs to know in 10 minutes. Mostly painful. You sent the instruction. Did anyone do it? Painful. A lot of pain. I feel a lot of pain in general.
A lot of red. Yeah.
Yes.
But honestly, as expected, most of the organizations, but Jonas, probably also the ones that you work with, I see those challenges, problems as a very very current and very apparent. So not a surprise that there's a lot of pain.
And here we see the persona distribution. So most of the intranets are what we call the duct tape operation. So it's kind of, taped together, which is not surprising because that's what most intranets are at the moment. And down here we see the category health in general. You could say 3. You could see here 3 at risk and 1 moderate trust. So the governance part is actually the ones that is currently performing best among those who answered, who took the test. So,
yeah, very interesting. I think we obviously had some fun with you had some fun with those personas, Jonas.
yes.
But I think there's something there in doing this test. And thanks for everyone who participated live here. I think it's something that, like I said, it's a prototype, so we're gonna take this to the next level and then might release it publicly on our website at some point. But I think it's a good test for you to walk through those scenarios. And sometimes it's also even just a realization of challenges that you maybe were aware that you have them as an organization, but it's also something that makes it very visible, and it makes it presentable for you as well to take maybe something like those test results, take it to your team, discuss it with your fellow leaders in HR and IT, the leadership team, to talk about those use cases, right? And hopefully there's a good distribution of different use cases that maybe not all 12 resonate 100% with how your company operates, but probably even if only half of them resonate, then pick those out and talk about them internally.
Yeah, and I think we put in these use cases we created the use cases focused on the business, right? So we were very focused on what drives business outcomes here, instead of focusing on you could say more general communication challenges, which I know that a lot of people who are working with intranets are focused on communication, but I feel that we have to link. We need, first of all, to link what we do in communications also with business outcomes, which we come to in a second. But we also need to be aware that if we, for instance, in comms, would like to own the intranet, there's a lot more to the intranet or the digital workplace than just communications, right? So that's one of the other challenges that I see, and also some of the blind spots I often experience when I talk to comms people. When we talk about you own the intranet, or they say we own the intranet, and then I ask, what do you own? Yeah, we own the communications part, right? So who owns the rest of it? Yeah, we don't really take care of that. So and that's where the governance part becomes a bit blurry and all these kind of things. Let's just go to this presentation again. So what we would like to talk about now, Kevin, is how do we actually build this business case? How do we connect the dots, right? So there's a lot about, we have some data often, which I believe are, you could say, mostly vague data in terms of signals, in terms of how many people are using X and Y and so on. And it's difficult sometimes to connect the dots. But we've tried to create an overview in terms of how we can actually go from, what we want to improve on the intranet to actually what to kind of frame it in a way where executives start to care. And we could call that maybe even operational excellence or something, but it's about figuring out, we can't come up to an executive board and say we need to improve the internet because search sucks, right? That's not going to work. So we need to figure out what does this actually lead to? What kind of friction does this actually create? So this is actually about people, they can't just find answers. And the operational effect might be faster resolution, but it could also be risk, right? It could be that people get the wrong information, or they don't get any information, and then it would actually make people do the wrong things, for instance. It will cost the business, and so on. So curious to hear about if anyone in the chat has done such a business case before. What you would normally do when you do these kind of things. And Kevin,
Yeah,
what is when you build this with clients?
Yeah, so those are a couple of questions that we always start with here, sharing examples of what actually maybe are frictions that you see maybe after we've done something similar, like a stress test, maybe just with asking questions, and then finding out what those improvements could be. But then really the hard task of this activity is finding the metrics that executives care about, and really translating quantifiable use cases into something that is believable and is ultimately fundable. And something that I always also try to apply here is that we don't want to end up with creating, like you said earlier, Jonas, funny money type of business cases, right? If there's a lot of ways how you could easily end up with a number that's way too big and not relatable at all. There's a lot of ways. If you, for example, go down the productivity route too hard, then you might end up with business cases that tell you that you, with your intranet, are going to save millions of pounds, millions of euros, which obviously nobody is ever going to believe. So there's always an importance. It is always important to be very conservative with how you calculate those when you find those metrics that executives care about, and also to apply certain haircuts, apply certain ramp time, right? Don't assume 100% usage or 100% adoption. Maybe only assume 25% if you're rolling out something for the first time in the first year. So yeah, there's a couple of different elements that are super important to apply before you start calculating numbers too quickly and then generating something that nobody is gonna buy into.
Yeah. And I have experienced that when I do, for instance, let's say I try to figure out, what are the needs in the organization, and when I speak to executives, they are actually speaking about the things we see in blue here, and then but it becomes easier for me then after I've heard them, talking about their pains and what they care about, to actually link it to something that's relevant in the digital workplace. Because you can actually create this kind of journey, regardless if you start on the left side or on the right side, because you can definitely get some input from executives that will make you able to link this to the other things as well. So it doesn't have to start on the left side; it can easily start on the right side as well. And you have to actually speak to both, you could say, stakeholder groups, right? So first of all, executives, and then also users, obviously, and then kind of link these things together.
Yeah. The qualitative aspect is very important. So no
Yeah.
matter if you do a full-blown employee survey, you only do a target group survey, or even a target group conversation in a physical or virtual setup, the more qualitative data you can get in terms of quotes, in terms of employees from different locations, different departments, also confirming that frictions remain, or frictions exist, in terms of them being confused, them not finding their answers, and that all being frictions for their daily work, then that's exactly the qualitative data that'll help you to underline the quantitative numbers in the case.
Yeah. And when we speak about presenting such a business case to the executive level, my personal experience has been that it doesn't, have to take a very, very long presentation. Actually, sometimes a one-pager like this, or something that you that you show here, is enough for people to make this decision whether it's worth it or not.
Yeah,
Actually,
exactly.
yeah. So that's sometimes we confuse our stakeholders with too much information. Share the one pager to begin with, and if they have more questions, obviously you would have something else to show. But I think it's important to work with these kind of one pages and then let them ask questions rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I just pulled up an example here from our business case template there, just to give you a couple of other examples. We talked a lot about operational execution. We talked a lot about risk and governance, and had a couple of cool examples there. So here's how those two pillars, based on a couple of KPIs, would then be quantified into actual numbers. And some of them we talked about, like accelerated workforce ramp or time to competence here as a top line KPI. We also talked about that accident example I mentioned earlier, or even if you think of downtime you have if you're a manufacturing production company, that there's also a very important top line KPI you could look at. And that's something that sometimes is forgotten, even though it's the most obvious one, is how much money can you offset? So what is how are you currently communicating, maybe with legacy tools that you might be able to consolidate? Maybe you currently spend a lot of money on printing out informations and putting it on a blackboard every day, or you have translations costs where you include an agency, right? These are all hard dollar cost offsets that you can nicely build in as an entire pillar into a business case. And ultimately, for it to come up with those actual numbers, obviously, the more actual data you have from your company, the more reliable this is. But you can very well also build those with benchmark data. Benchmark data that you can find from market research, from similar companies, but ultimately this is just the math behind those numbers. The more you can find actual data, and let's maybe look at the second pillar here in the middle, the more you can actually go to your HR, and they will have this data, right, and ask them, okay, how many hires do we have per year? How long does it take to currently onboard them, and how many days might we be able to save them, right? So how much quicker will we be able to bring them up to speed? How much will we be able to decrease the time to competence? Those are a couple of examples here to build those formulas and come up with very defendable metrics. And again, as you can see, nothing that goes into millions or millions of euros, but actually something that basically maybe ends up with an ROI of 1 to 2 to maximum 3, compared to how much money you would pay for an intranet platform.
Interesting. Fantastic. Cool. Unless there are any more questions or some questions in the chat, Annette, I think I will leave it to you to close the session so that people can move along to be productive and or go into meetings or whatever you do.
Perfect. Thank you. I think before I close, I want to click enter, give you 2 more gifts from this session that hopefully add some value for all the listeners, because we have kind of a ROI calculator where you can, get a proper number that will be helpful in these discussions with the CFOs or the finance division. I'm trying to click enter, but I can't. And then Jonas actually wrote a white paper on this topic. It will be released within the next few weeks, and we want to give you an opportunity to sign up for it if you're interested.
I shared the link on it.
Ah, nice.
Thank you. I am not sure why I cannot share this message here, but let me share the early sign up form as well. Here we go. Okay, and not to stretch it, I know you spent a good 50 minutes with us. Thank you so much, Jonas and Kevin, for this insightful session. I hope it added some value. So before you head out, maybe a one-line feedback, if anything, here in the chat would be highly appreciated, because it helps us making these sessions as good as possible for the future. And I'll give the group here 2-3 minutes for any feedback, popping in. Also questions you might have, now is the time for it.
Yeah, and also if the use cases we put into the stress test were relevant, perceived relevant, would also be nice to know.
Yeah, definitely keen to hear your feedback. Feel free to reach out. I think Annette shared our LinkedIn links earlier, so always happy to receive your connection request there and hear your feedback.
Yes.
Awesome. I don't see any question coming in, so I do think we're good to go. We wish you all a beautiful day. Join us next time, and thank you, Kevin and Jonas. Have a good one.
Thanks, Annette. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice week. Bye-bye.